When I first moved into the old brick apartment complex on Maple Street, I thought I'd finally found peace. The place was affordable, and though the hallways smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic, it felt like the kind of place where I could start fresh. I'd been through a rough year. Divorce, job changes, the kind of stress that makes you want to melt into anonymity. The apartment was small, just 2 rooms and a kitchen with peeling linoleum, but it was mine. The landlord, a balding man with nervous eyes, handed me the keys with a muttered warning. "Keep to yourself and don't bother number 6B, he said, shuffling paperwork. I laughed awkwardly. "What's wrong with 6B? He looked up at me with a tight smile. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with. Just keep quiet at night, and you'll be fine." I thought it was some old tenant dispute, maybe a cranky neighbor who complained about noise. I didn't press further. That night, as I unpacked, I heard movement in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate steps that stopped directly outside my door. Then silence. I froze, one hand hovering over the box I was unpacking. No knock, no sound, just someone standing there. After what felt like an eternity, the steps moved again, retreating slowly down the hall. When I peeked through the peephole, all I saw was the back of a tall man in a gray hoodie disappearing into apartment 6B. Over the next week, I began to notice little things. The man in 6B never seemed to leave during the day. His blinds were always drawn, his windows dark. Yet at night, strange sounds leaked through the walls, dragging noises, muffled thuds, and sometimes what sounded like low murmuring. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of scratching, like long nails running down the shared wall between my bedroom and his. It went on for nearly an hour. I pressed my ear against the plaster, my heart hammering. Beneath the scratching was something else. Breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate breathing, as if he knew I was listening. I backed away from the wall and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, when I left for work, there was something strange outside his door. A small puddle of dark liquid seeping from underneath. It looked like spilled coffee at first, but when I crouched to get a better look, the coppery smell hit me. Blood. Before I could process it, the door creaked open just a crack. An eye stared out at me, gray, glassy, unblinking. "Problem?" a low voice asked. I stammered, shaking my head, backing away. The door shut again with a soft click. When I returned from work later that evening, the puddle was gone. The carpet outside his door was scrubbed clean, damp with some kind of cleaner. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Mrs. Green, an elderly woman who lived across the hall, stopped me one evening as I was unlocking my door. She spoke in a low whisper, eyes darting nervously toward 6B. "You should be careful around him," she said. Her voice trembled. "People go missing, you know. Always when he's around." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She shook her head quickly. "Doesn't matter. Just keep your door locked. Don't answer if he knocks." The way she hurried back into her apartment left me unsettled. That night, I heard it again. The dragging sound. But this time, it wasn't inside his apartment. It was in the hallway. Something heavy being pulled slowly across the floor. When I peeked out through the peephole, I saw him. The man from 6B, his hood down, revealing thin, stringy black hair and a pale, gaunt face. He was dragging a large black trash bag down the hall. It looked heavy, so heavy that it left a dark smear across the carpet. Every few feet, he stopped, adjusted his grip, and muttered to himself. I couldn't make out the words, but his voice was low, guttural, almost like chanting. He stopped right outside my door. I held my breath, not daring to move. He tilted his head as though listening, and for a moment I thought he could hear my heartbeat pounding in my chest. Then slowly, he continued dragging the bag toward the stairwell. I didn't sleep that night. Days turned into weeks, and my fear only grew. I avoided the hallway when I thought he might be there, and I began double-locking my door at night. Then, one evening, there was a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on my door. I froze, staring at the wood. It was late, past midnight. Nobody should be knocking at that hour. "Neighbor." His voice was muffled but unmistakable. "I made dinner. You should come over." My mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed at me to stay silent. After a long pause, he knocked again. Harder this time. "I can hear you breathing," he whispered through the door. I stumbled back, covering my mouth with both hands, tears stinging my eyes. After a tense silence, I heard his footsteps retreat. His door creaked open, then shut. I didn't move until the sun came up. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. One Saturday, when I knew he was gone, he left briefly at night sometimes, returning hours later with those black bags. I decided to take a look. His door wasn't fully shut, just barely ajar. Every nerve in my body screamed against it, but curiosity won. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, rot, thick and nauseating. I gagged, covering my nose. The apartment was dark, every window covered in thick black sheets. The walls were covered in strange symbols, scrawled in what looked like dried blood. In the center of the living room was a wooden chair, and on it, a mannequin. Or at least I thought it was, until I saw the skin. Pale gray, stitched together crudely in patches. The face was missing eyes, just hollow sockets. My stomach lurched. In the corner were more black bags, dozens of them piled like garbage. One had split open, revealing a withered human hand. I staggered back, choking down bile, and bumped into something. A table. On it lay photographs, hundreds of them. They were all of the tenants in the building, and in the center of the stack was a photo of me, taken from outside my window. I dropped it, my hands shaking. That's when I heard it. The door creaking shut behind me. I spun around. He was standing there, blocking the exit. "You shouldn't be in here," he said softly, his lips curling into a smile that didn't reach his dead eyes. I tried to speak, but no words came out. He stepped closer, the floorboards groaning under his weight. "You were curious. Everyone is, at first." I bolted toward the kitchen, searching for another way out, but the windows were nailed shut, boards screwed tightly across them. "Stay," he said, his voice deep, commanding. "It's better if you stay. You'll understand soon." I grabbed a kitchen knife, brandishing it with trembling hands. "Stay away from me." He tilted his head, studying me. Then he laughed, a dry, rasping sound that made my skin crawl. "You'll join them," he whispered. "They all do." Somehow, adrenaline took over. I lunged at him, slashing wildly. The blade grazed his arm enough to make him stumble. I darted past him, shoving the door with all my strength. It burst open, and I sprinted down the hallway, screaming for help. Doors cracked open, neighbors peeking out. But when they saw who I was running from, they shut them just as quickly. No one wanted to get involved. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping in the cold night air. I called the police, my words tumbling out in frantic bursts. They arrived, but when they entered apartment 6B, it was empty. The bags were gone, the symbols painted over, the chair, the photographs, everything. Gone. It was as if it had never been there. The police gave me skeptical looks, and though they took my statement, I could see the doubt in their eyes. But I know what I saw. I moved out the next morning, breaking my lease without a second thought. The landlord didn't argue. Weeks later, I drove past the building one last time. The window of 6B was open. For the first time since I'd lived there, the blinds were drawn back. And standing there, watching me, was the man. He smiled, raising his hand slowly in a wave. And in his other hand, dangling limply by the hair, was a severed head. Story 2. The house next door. I grew up in the suburbs where every house looked the same, every lawn trimmed the same, and every neighbor smiled the same fake smile when you passed them on the sidewalk. So when my wife and I bought our first home on Willow Creek Lane, I thought I knew what to expect. Friendly nods, block parties, kids riding bikes until the streetlights came on. That's what we got, except for the house next door. It was an old Victorian, tall and narrow, with peeling white paint and shutters that banged in the wind. While the rest of the neighborhood was neat and modern, that house sat like a rotting tooth in an otherwise perfect smile. The owner was a man named Mr. Halloway. At least, that's what the neighbors told us. But no one seemed to know much else. "He's quiet," one woman said with a shrug when I asked. "Keeps to himself." Too quiet, I thought. In the 3 weeks after moving in, I never saw him leave. Never saw him pick up mail. Never saw the lights turn on. The house looked abandoned, except every so often. I'd feel eyes watching me from behind those torn curtains. At first, it was little things. Coming home late from work and catching a glimpse of a face in the upstairs window. Tall, pale, motionless. Gone when I blinked. Or hearing creaks on the floorboards next door in the dead of night, even though the place was supposedly empty. My wife laughed it off. "You're just stressed," she said, ruffling my hair. "You've been working too much." But stress didn't explain what I saw one morning at 3 a.m. when I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen for water. The sink overlooked the side yard, and beyond it, the window of the Halloway house. Someone was standing there, right in the darkened window, staring directly at me. I froze, the glass of water trembling in my hand. It was a man, tall, impossibly thin, with long gray hair that hung in stringy clumps. His eyes caught the moonlight, pale and unblinking. I shut the blinds and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I tried bringing it up again with the neighbors. "Have you ever actually seen Halloway?" I asked during a barbecue down the street. The conversation stopped dead. People exchanged looks, uneasy smiles. One man cleared his throat. "Best not to ask questions. He doesn't like attention." The way he said it, hushed and fearful, sent a shiver through me. When I pressed, a woman leaned in and whispered, "He's been here longer than anyone. Don't cross him. Just leave it be." Leave it be. But I couldn't. A week later, something appeared on my porch. A letter. Old yellowed, written in spidery handwriting. "Neighbor, it is rude to stare. If you are so curious, why not come for tea? Tonight. Midnight. Bring no one." I showed it to my wife, half joking, half terrified. She frowned. "It's probably some prank." But the paper felt too real, too deliberate. That night, I found myself standing at his doorstep at 11:59, my breath fogging in the cold air. I told myself I wouldn't go inside. I'd just knock, maybe confront him, get some answers. The door opened before I touched it. "Come in," said a voice. Smooth, deep, wrong. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Dust, mold, and something faintly metallic. The interior was worse than the outside. Walls stained yellow, furniture covered in sheets. But what caught my eye were the photographs. Hundreds of them, framed and hung in neat rows. Each one showed a family, standing proudly in front of their house on Willow Creek Lane. Except every photo was decades old. Different families, different years. And in each one, standing in the background, half hidden in shadow, was Mr. Halloway. Unchanged. He appeared in pictures from the 1950s, the 1970s, the 1990s, all of them. Always lurking near the edge, watching. My stomach turned to ice. "Sit," he said, motioning to a chair at the table. I obeyed, too terrified not to. On the table was tea, steaming in delicate china cups that looked older than me. "Drink," he said. I didn't move. He smiled, his teeth yellow and too long. "You've been watching me. You must have questions." My voice trembled. What are you?" His eyes glinted. "I am your neighbor." I should have run then, but I couldn't move. His gaze held me frozen, like an insect in amber. "You wonder why no one speaks of me," he said softly. "Why they look away? It is because they remember. Families come, families go, but I remain." I swallowed hard. "You've been here all this time?" He nodded slowly. "This street is mine. Every soul who lives here mine. In time, you will be mine too." The room felt colder, the shadows deeper. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He leaned closer, his breath foul and hot. "When the time comes, you will join the others." I dared to glance at the corner of the room. For the first time, I noticed the shapes there. Figures, standing motionless. Dozens of them. At first, I thought they were mannequins, until one shifted slightly, letting out a low moan. They were people, pale, lifeless, eyes blank. Neighbors I'd seen at barbecues, mowing lawns, walking dogs. Now they stood in his house, vacant, enslaved. "Drink," he said again, pushing the tea toward me. I bolted from the chair, knocking it over, and sprinted for the door. The door slammed shut before I could reach it. His laughter filled the house, low and booming, shaking the walls. "You cannot leave, neighbor." "Not yet." I stumbled back, heart pounding, searching for another way out. The figures in the corner began to move, shuffling toward me with stiff, jerky motions. I ran up the stairs, two at a time, desperate for escape. The upper floor was worse, rooms filled with more photographs, more lifeless figures. Windows boarded shut from the inside. At the end of the hall was a single door, slightly open, light spilling through the crack. I shoved it open and froze. It was a nursery. Inside were cribs, dozens of them, each one holding something wrapped in blankets. I stepped closer and pulled one back. Not a baby. $1. Handmade, crude, stitched from cloth and skin. Human skin. I dropped it, choking back a scream. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. I had no choice. I hurled myself through the nearest window, the glass shattering around me. I landed hard in the yard below, pain shooting through my legs, but adrenaline kept me moving. I sprinted across the lawn, into my house, slamming the door and locking it behind me. My wife bolted up from the couch, eyes wide. "What the hell happened to you?" she cried. I couldn't answer. I just pulled her into the bedroom, locked that door too, and waited for dawn. When I finally dared to look outside, the house next door was dark and still. No sign of him, no sign of the figures. I tried calling the police. They searched, but found nothing unusual. The house was empty, they said, abandoned. But I know the truth. Sometimes late at night, I still see him, standing in the window, watching. And every so often I find photographs on my porch, pictures of me, sleeping. Story 3. The Basement Window. I'd been desperate for a place to stay. My last landlord kicked me out when I fell behind on rent, and options were slim. That's when I found the listing. Room for rent, cheap, must be okay with quiet neighbors. It was vague, but the price was half of anything else in the area. When I arrived, the house looked old but sturdy. A 2-story colonial with ivy crawling up the bricks. The landlord, a middle-aged man named Mr. Rourke, greeted me stiffly. "You'll have the upstairs room," he said. "Bathrooms down the hall. Don't go in the basement." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but his face stayed hard, serious. "Why not?" I asked. He handed me the keys. "Because it's not part of your lease." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten, but I let it go. I needed a roof over my head more than I needed answers. The first night, I noticed the neighbor across the street. She was always there, standing at her window. A thin woman with stringy blonde hair, watching the house with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. The next morning, as I was leaving for work, she was waiting on the sidewalk. "You live there now?" she asked flatly. Yeah," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't go in the basement." The way she said it, low, urgent, almost pleading, made my skin prickle. I asked her why, but she just shook her head and walked away. For the first few weeks, things were fine. Mr. Rourke kept to himself, rarely coming upstairs. But at night, I began to hear things. Thuds, scraping sounds, and sometimes voices. At first, I thought he was watching TV late, but the noises came from below my floor, muffled and distorted. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I crept down the stairs and stood outside the basement door. The sounds were clearer now. Whimpers. A man whispering something over and over, then a scream, short, muffled, cut off as though by a hand clamping down. I stumbled back up the stairs, heart racing. The next day, the neighbor woman cornered me again. "He keeps them down there," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously toward the house. "Don't you hear them?" My mouth went dry. "Keeps who?" She grabbed my wrist with bony fingers. "They'll never leave, just like the others." I yanked free and hurried off, but her words echoed in my mind. That night, I dreamed of the basement, of a door creaking open, of pale hands clawing toward me from the dark. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself I was imagining things. But one evening, as I was taking out the trash, I noticed something I hadn't before. A small, grimy window near the base of the house, half hidden by bushes. It was the basement window. When I crouched down and wiped away the dirt, I froze. A face stared back at me. Not Mr. Rourke's, a woman, pale, hollow-eyed, her mouth moving soundlessly. She raised a trembling hand to the glass, pressing it weakly as if begging. I stumbled back, my heart slamming against my ribs. When I looked again, the window was dark. The next day, I confronted Mr. Rourke. "There's someone in your basement?" I asked, trying to sound casual. His expression didn't change. "No. I thought I saw..." "You didn't." His tone was final, his eyes cold. Something inside me snapped. That night, when I was sure he was asleep, I crept down the stairs with a flashlight. The basement door was locked, but the window wasn't. I slipped outside, pried it open, and crawled through. The smell hit me first. Rot, sweat, blood. My light swept across the room. Chains bolted to the walls, mattresses stained dark, and people, 3 of them, huddled in the shadows. Thin, bruised, eyes wide with terror. One of them was the woman I'd seen at the window. "Help us," she croaked. Before I could respond, the basement door opened. Mr. Rourke stood there, a butcher's knife glinting in his hand. "I told you," he said softly. "Don't go in the basement." The prisoners whimpered, shrinking back. I raised the flashlight like a weapon. "What the hell is this?" His smile was calm, almost kind. "They're my neighbors." My stomach turned. "You're keeping them safe," he interrupted. "The world out there is cruel. I keep them here, where no one can hurt them." "You're insane," I whispered. He took a step closer, knife gleaming. "Number. I'm the only one who understands. Neighbors should stay close. Forever." I bolted, scrambling toward the window. He lunged, the knife slicing across my arm. Pain exploded, but adrenaline pushed me through. I tumbled out into the night, sprinting across the yard. Behind me, I heard him shouting, the prisoners wailing. I ran straight to the neighbor woman's house, pounding on her door. She let me in without a word, locking it tight. "I told you," she whispered, staring past me into the dark. "But you didn't listen." We called the police. When they arrived, the basement was empty. No chains, no prisoners, no Mr. Rourke. The place looked abandoned, as though no one had lived there in years. But I know what I saw. I moved out the next morning, but I never stopped looking over my shoulder. Weeks later, I woke in the middle of the night to a sound at my window. Tap, tap, tap. When I pulled back the curtain, my blood ran cold. Mr. Rourke was standing there. He smiled, lifted a finger to his lips, and whispered, "Shh, don't tell the neighbors."
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Was it paranormal or just something we can't explain? Share your thoughts in the comments, and remember, never watch alone at night.